Oh, and we're live. Welcome everybody. Welcome to everyone joining us from all kinds of places, and in particular, a big welcome to our moderator, to our discussion panel tonight, and our moderator. So, for those of you joining us tonight, and those of you who will most likely be watching this at a later time, we called a big strategic planning meeting of sorts to make sure that the next steps that edchatNZ takes represents the incredible community that we have here. edchatNZ has always been a community, is what we always want it to be. So whatever steps we take next and the directions we go next, we wanted to make sure that they represent everyone's voices and everyone who wants to be part of this. At the same time, we're really aware that often when we start on Twitter chats, it's when we start on this journey of future-focused education and blended learning and flipped learning and modern learning environments and all these things, and it's a great entry point for a lot of people and really sets a lot of people off on a journey to discover some amazing new things. But for a lot of other people, they've been on that journey for a while and they're looking for something deeper. They're looking for, as Matt put it earlier today, they're looking for some research now and they want to know what the research says, some ideas on a Twitter chat. They want more than just that. So we've got a really diverse group whose needs we're trying to meet. So tonight is really about trying to chart the direction of our next steps. What do we want to do as a community? Where do we want to go? And to help us do that, we've got Tim Kong, who'll be our moderator this evening. So with all of that future directions in mind, I'll pass over to Tim, who's going to moderate tonight's conversation online. We've got Mel, who'll be feeding in from Twitter and moderating on there. She's going to be Wonder Woman tonight by those sounds of things. But I'll hand over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Danielle, and kia ora everyone who is either watching live or is watching this later. Thank you for coming along on what in Wellington at least is a very cold evening. I am been honoured to be asked to be the moderator from Danielle and the EdChat team. So my role tonight is to keep things ticking over in the hour that we've got, to ask a couple of questions. We've got 4 questions we want to discuss. But the 3 esteemed people in front of you that we're doing most of the talking, Mel, Philippa, and Matt Nicol. And we've all chosen colours either representing something of ourselves. Now, I chose red mainly because I'm from Canterbury originally, and have a team that's playing in a rugby final this weekend. So I live in Wellington, but after 13 years here, I still support a team from down south. So that's why I'm red. But I will pass to Philippa just to introduce herself, and then Mel, and then Matt, and then Danielle as well, before we go into our first question. Philippa.
Oh, kia ora koutou, ko Philippa Aho. I'm also coming at you from Wellington. I have no particular significance attached to the blue. It's just that was the default colour and everybody else changed theirs, so I decided to stick with the blue. So, you know, really well thought out, highly intensely researched, you know, thoughts coming from Philippa this evening. Hopefully that shouldn't continue for too much longer.
Kia ora koutou. I'm Mel, coming in from Hamilton, the mighty Tron. I chose yellow because Tim had picked red, Philippa was still on blue, Maddie had gone green, and it was the only colour, and Danielle had gone off my screen for a second, and so I thought I'd be different. But now that Danielle's yellow, I feel the need to change my colour about every 10 minutes and just cycle through the rainbow.
Sounds good, and thank you, Matt.
Oh, sorry, kia ora koutou. Yeah, my green is, I suppose, because I had the fortune of growing up in South Canterbury, so beautiful Aoraki, etc. So the South Canterbury, but also green of the science learning area in the New Zealand curriculum. Yeah, welcome everyone. I hope there's something worthwhile for you tonight, and really looking forward to hearing some questions from out there via Twitter, etc.
Cool. And thank you, Danielle. You've obviously done a little bit of introduction, but you can explain your colour, seeing that seems to be the trend. I didn't mean for that to start, but there we go. We've all explained our colour. So if you just want to introduce yourself for anyone who's not seen or heard from you.
There was no pink, so mine was mostly a sulk picking. For those who don't know, my name is Danielle, and I founded edchatNZ in October this year. Will be 5 years ago, which I'm finding a little bit overwhelming at times now, to be honest. Like it never, back then it didn't ever feel like it would get to this stage. So I'm really excited to be able to share tonight with the most incredible people that I've met over this 5-year journey. Without a doubt, I am the person I am today because of my Twitter friends. So on that note, I'll pass back to Tim.
Cool, thank you, Danielle. And so as Danielle said, this is the October coming up is the 5th birthday of edchatNZ. And I've been sort of not always a regular, but drop in and out and have some conversations. And one of the things I've come to quite appreciate is those, Danielle said, sometimes you feel like there's things that maybe, because of where you are in your career, oh, yep, you've heard that all before, or they're talking about the same old thing again. I've actually really respect Danielle and in terms of what she's built and allowed to be built, because I think it reflects the actual real-time nature of what education is in New Zealand, because we always have people coming in and out. And the fact that it's a really welcoming community that allows people to be challenged, allows people to pick up some things, to learn things, to dip in and out as they need is a really important, and it fills a really important space in, I think, the New Zealand, educational, I think PLD is the proper term, but that professional development space where people are just learning from each other. So this is an hour or so in which we've got to just chat on a number of questions. And the first one that we wanted to look at, sorry, I'll just go over the format. So I'll just pose, there's 4 questions for us to discuss, and these 4 fine people will discuss them. Mel will bring in any things from the Twitter conversation, and then my job mainly is to keep time and to keep us ticking over so that we don't run away or spend the whole hour just on the first question. So if you do have questions or things that are making you think, oh yeah, but what about, please do put them in the Twitter feed using the hashtag edchatNZ, and Mel will feed them into the conversation as well. But I'll start with what, as Philippa said earlier when we were discussing this, is a really crucial question. The big one, really, what is that niche? What is that space for edchatNZ? Is it important for us as individuals and possibly, as I said, for a wider sector? And if it is, who is it important to and why? And so that's one of those really bad teaching questions where I've given you 4 questions at the same time. And expecting you to answer them all clearly. But it is a discussion, so I'll set that up and I'll wait I won't call on anyone to go first because it is an open forum. That is the first question. Have at it.
But as if it's a real teacher question, Tim, then you'll also already have the answers in your head.
I won't. I've got them on. I've got blank post-it notes prepared. Anyway, well, you spoke first, Philippa, so you can go. What are your thoughts on this one?
Oh, crumbs. Yeah, I just want to almost answer this by posing more questions. As you already alluded to, Tim, I think that understanding what that niche is for edchatNZ, who it's important to, why it's important to them, and how we even know that. So this is where I'm really hoping that people will chime in on the Twitter chat so that Mel can feed into us, because I can speak to why it's important to me, but I wouldn't want to be making assumptions about why it's important to others. But what Danielle said, really, I mean, for me, edchatNZ was the gateway drug, and just feeding that interest and that thinking about the wider purpose of education got me interested in kind of futures thinking, and has really expanded my horizons and given me new tools to think about and to think with. But I'd be really curious to hear from others as to what they find that space to be for.
One of the comments or one of the tweets that's jumped out at me straight away is that it's a judgment-free collaborative tool. And I find that really interesting. That was actually the first one that's come up as a response to the question. And I think that was, and I go back to what you were saying, Philippa, as well, we can only really talk about how important it's been to us from a personal perspective, but you know, that just sums it up perfectly. You could jump onto chats, you could say anything. You know, Tim would be there most of the time at devil's advocating in the background. So but not in a judgment way, in a challenging way, in a thought-provoking way. And so yeah, it very much isn't, it's that collaborative space where you can take the risks that some of us weren't ready to take in the classroom before we became part of this group. And then as soon as I became part of edchatNZ, I started taking the big risks in the classroom because I could talk them through on a Thursday night with like-minded peers.
Matt, how about you?
I think that as far as the chats go, I think Tim made a good point about that you're really engaged with. Sometimes you're going, yeah, I've heard this stuff before, and that's great. You can pick or choose, and that's really good. As far as it being a hashtag, it seems to be that really good. It doesn't matter whether I teach ECE, primary, secondary, intermediate, special needs, subject specific, cross-curricular. edchatNZ gives me a hashtag that I can use to share things, ask questions, connect with people. I think that it's that overall education connector, I suppose is the word I'm looking for, via Twitter. As far as the chats themselves, I think that they still provide a really good service and support to those who are new to Twitter, new to that they want to explore something different with their pedagogy, that they want to try something different, they want to hear what other people have got to say about a topic that is juicy to them. So I don't think it's got one niche. I think it's actually the fact that it's very all-encompassing, and as Philippa and Mel have alluded to, it's very welcoming and non-judgmental. So yeah.
I haven't read it yet, but I saw on Facebook Claire Amos had put something about communities of learning and questioning, you know, the future focusedness of them and just how community of learning they really are. And I feel like edchatNZ embodies what community of learning should be about. I feel like when edchatNZ people get together, whether it's in Twitter, whether it's in person, whether it's in a coffee because I tweet and say, hey, I'm in town, who wants coffee? That the learning, there's always learning. And sometimes I picked up a really cool new strategy, so people might be interested to know. So while we were waiting for 8:30 to arrive, we were comparing notes about the best maths tools that our schools were using. It can be as simple as that sometimes, and other times it's a really deep discussion about, well, what is the purpose of education, and you know, how does that tie into what the decisions we're making at a leadership level. And so I feel like for me personally, community of learning really sums it up, because it's a place that I can go to where I know that I'm going to be able to find and connect with somebody that can help me out with whatever learning thing I'm engaged with at that moment. So whether it is, actually, I need to try something else for my class, this thing that's just not working, I'm having a behavior issue in class, everything from that, right all the way through to philosophical leadership decisions, change the world level stuff, government level. So I feel like we've got such a huge space of learning in there together, and I wonder if that's the niche really, is that we're actually a community of learning.
So to go with that, I wonder if our chats are pitched at a level, and this is a question for those following on Twitter at the moment, I suppose, are our chats pitched at a level that is an all-embracing and all-welcoming community of learning, or is it only for those that are experienced with Twitter chats and how they run?
Sorry, Tim, I'll just say, represent the Twitter chat here, and that a few people have referenced that exactly what was said much earlier, and that it's a gateway and it's a stepping stone and it's a first point of contact. I think that would sort of say that it is that entry point, and it is welcoming to those people new to the Twitterverse, I think Megan said, and new to teaching as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one of the challenges is that when you get anything that builds like edchatNZ has, you feel, and I think, I can't speak for you, Danielle, but I think you probably feel some responsibility for it to be enough or to be everything. And I think there's a danger in there, because I don't think it can be everything, to everyone. I also think, I mean, I probably push back on that. It's a community of learning. Arguably, the thing you built was in place before communities of learning, and arguably we had communities of learning are a political initiative. So let's just be okay with that. We always had the ability to collaborate before we were told politically you can get some money if you get together and collaborate. The fact that we didn't was on us. And I think to go to what Maddie said as well, one of the things I have enjoyed about the edchatNZ bit is that it is absolutely cross-sector. So it's people passionate about what's happening in schools and education, just talking to each other. And so by definition, that's collaboration, but it doesn't need all of the framework of, say, a COL or whatever you want to call it. And I think because of that, it's more powerful. I think the challenge, like I said, is it becomes a thing that maybe we have to ensure continues to be, but it actually isn't. I mean, its power is based on what you get from it. And so, what each of you four gets from it is probably quite different from what I get from it. But I think it exists in quite a, to go to the question, it's niche, but it's fluid, I suppose. And I think I like that. I think if it was, if it was more than fluid and it was static and fixed, it would be a PLD contract. And, we'd have to have targets and everything like that. And, that becomes something that I don't, I think then does become static. And arguably, you could say, well, actually, because I've spent time on an EdChat, can I add this to my PTCs because this is making me a better teacher? You could, or you could just say, this is who I am, and this is part of how I converse. And what I like about that perspective is it's not about Twitter. Twitter's just the tool that allows us to connect. It's about all the other, and you alluded to those as well, Danielle. Hey, I'm having a coffee, and that's a really, really powerful thing.
I think you've really touched on something there, Tim, around this idea is that we don't have to be outcome focused. What I get from it and what Matt gets from it and what whoever else gets from it can be completely different. And if I take this much away today and I take a whole bunch away tomorrow, that's okay too.
Yep,
I like that.
Absolutely.
Claire's popped in and said that surely its role is disrupting the mighty echo chamber that can be Twitter PLNs, and that we can can we expand perspectives. And I think that's a word we use a lot, echo chamber, in edchatNZ, and we actively in the background when we're talking to each other and we're planning chats and we're thinking about questions, we always, particularly Steve, always comes back to it and says, let's make sure that we're not an echo chamber. How do we expand our horizons to make sure that EdChat's not just this exclusive group in which everyone's saying the same thing for the same reasons, and it goes back to that inclusivity as well.
Yeah, I think that echo chamber thing, and I think certainly those of us who've been around on Twitter chats for a while feel that often when we're in other chats as well, international ones, that is, where it is often a lot of the same, and lots of back patting that's going on. And although some of that is important in terms of that encouragement that you get around, yep, we're all fighting this fight, we're all wanting to see some of this, there is definitely an element there where in the background somebody needs to go, well, actually, how do we break out of the filter bubble? Because personally, I feel like things like the devil's advocate in particular, and all the people who like being devil's advocate in chats, I think they really add, I think for me, they really add to the quality of what this has become, because it shifts it from just sharing to a much deeper discussion about how we develop our practice and why we make the decisions that we make.
I think the introduction of Devil's Advocate was also quite easy to do because we'd created such a welcoming, non-judgmental community. It meant that you could have a person whose job it was to push back, ask for more detail, ask for more depth, and you wouldn't be, the community knew that's their job. It's not that they are disrespecting your opinion or your attempts. And I think it was based on the fact that we went to, or the thought we came across pretty early that this is a welcoming community.
Yeah.
I'm interested, so there's been lots put out about this idea that it's a welcoming community. What is it that's made people feel that it's a welcome community? Because it's still Twitter and it's still very public.
And I wonder if there's anybody who's, is there anybody out there this evening for whom this is their first edchatNZ chat, and they're suddenly going, what the hey? Or, this is sorry?
It looks like there's a couple.
Do they feel as though they've been welcomed this evening? FYI, welcome. But yeah, just, it'd be interesting to hear if there is anybody in the chat at the moment who is new or is, like long time listener, first time caller. It would be quite interesting to hear from them, because I wonder sometimes with the Devil's Advocate, I'm a fan of it, but I actually know some people who have graciously moderated for us who don't like it, find it disrespectful, and wonder about its place, and if we are a gateway drug, is that something that is actually off-putting to people who come into the space for the first time and they don't expect to be challenged,
Or off-putting for people who haven't been into the space either. Some people are just commenting at the moment about the reputation of Twitter being a poisonous, destructive zone for bullies. And so when EdChat or when Twitter is suggested as a PLN to new teachers or even existing teachers, that it has a fairly bad rep to start with, and even just getting them on here may be a challenge.
And I think part of that is, again, that coming back to the tool being the thing. And I think possibly us and possibly people who have been here for an amount of time, it's not about the tool anymore. It's about the connections that the tool enables. And so initially, when you're trying to get into it, it will always be, for any new person coming in, it's about figuring your way through the defined roles, figuring your way through the constructs of the medium, and in terms of the going back to that question, that the niche bit is that. How niche can it be? How niche should it be? And I think reflecting that fluidity is important, while also supporting it in a way that actually, I mean, maybe I'm biased. I appreciate that critical take, and I think I've said it, if not in this forum and on others, that I expect to be held to account, and I expect people to, come at me, because I can say things that possibly cross or possibly can be construed wrong, and that's important. I think that's important for me in my own practice, that I'm happy to be held accountable, and I think it's that shift, I think, from how do you frame something in terms of its importance, that it gets us to a place where people understand that it's not just Twitter, it's how these people connect. Because it's not just about communities of learning, it's about what you do with it.
I think perhaps we've touched on something really important here, that if we're talking about the niche, is that actually that's a niche that, for us at least, in the Hangout tonight, feels like quite a comfortable place to be at, that actually we're not just about the chatting, but we want the critical discussion kind of chats. We want the critical, deeper things that happen. And so I'm quite interested for people on Twitter whether that feels like something important to them as well about edchatNZ, that it is that is a niche that we want to occupy with around that critical discussion, and whether we want that challenge in there.
I think, Mel, if you canvass those, I think that's actually quite a nice segue into question 2,
Yeah.
because I think we're starting to knock on that door. Which, and question 2 is basically, do we feel that edchatNZ is worth trying to grow? And I think what we've already started to unpack there is 2 questions, and probably the most important one always is, well, why? Why is it important to grow? How big do you want it to be, I guess? And secondly, I think, how would you grow it? I mean, the thing I could hear you possibly say there, Danielle, is, does it grow in a way that maybe, and this is just me spitballing, so it's nothing fixed, you know, that once a month there's a new to Twitter type conversation that isn't the whole critical devil's advocate, you know, right, we're all in. Do you frame it in a way that it maps onto some of the more realities of people, either as new teachers or as new to the medium? And I think, you know, you've worked really hard, you and your team have worked really hard to frame up how each section goes and what the topic is. Maybe that's the way for it to grow. But other than my thoughts, to the rest of how do the 4 of you feel that EdChat is worth trying to grow, and why? And Mel, just pile in when you got to this.
So I'm quite interested to hear from the rest of you first before I weigh in on this one.
Probably quite pertinent first responses from Rachel, who got SciChat up and running off the ground, and that's, how do we make it sustainable? Knowing how much work goes into the chats, the hosts and everything. And so, yeah, growth. How do you manage growth in a sustainable way and meet the needs of the community, I guess, because if we go back to the good old technology curriculum, who are our stakeholders, what do they need from us, and what are we going to be able to do to meet those needs? I'm not answering anything, I'm just posing more questions.
And I've got another one, because I mean, what does it even mean to grow it? I mean, what do we measure growth by? Is it that we have more people come to the chats? Is it that we have more chats? Is it that we move beyond the chat to something else? You know, what do we actually mean by growing edchatNZ?
I think just to give some context for people as well, so over the years now, things that we've had for EdChat is that we've had our fortnightly Twitter chats for about 5 years now. We had a short time when we had a podcast as well in partnership with BAM Radio in the States. We've had 2 conferences now, and we've also had a MOOC, so we had a free online course as well. So we've tried a number of things as well over the years to kind of dabble and test the water in terms of other spaces as well, to complement what goes on in between hashtags.
So come on, Twitter people, what do you want?
I think
so far we've got frozen lyrics.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and that's always that's a tough framing. And I think I wrote a blog post many years ago that I think one of the challenges I think in our sector is that we often do this. We often ask, what do teachers want? And teachers will often say, the go-to one is, I want more time in my day. Ignoring the fact that the rules of physics mean we can't give you that. It's just metaphorical. I need more time. I want more time. I think that maybe the question is, what do we need? What do we need more of? And that, is again, to go to the fluidity of that first question and what EdChat means to people is different for every person. Those bits that you framed up, Danielle, are fantastic things. The 2 conferences, a MOOC, the podcast, but they do map onto exactly what Rachel said. How do you, as one individual or even a handful of individuals, continue to sustain and build something? There's a reason ULearn takes 10 months to prepare and costs, $600,000-$800,000, whatever it is it takes a lot of people to get those things rolling and to get them into play. And again, I suppose tapping into what Philippa said, is growth for growth's sake what you need? Even as I was thinking as you were describing it, well, you could just jump from tool to tool. I mean, do we move to a Slack instance, or do you move to more of a Facebook-oriented? It becomes about the tool. Or are you having a multitude of tools? I don't know. But each of those have costs, right? They arguably have benefits. If you're more a Facebook person or a Slack person, then those tools will be easier. But it is a challenge, I think. One of the things I like about Twitter, and I use it quite a bit, is it's relatively light. I don't have to invest too much setup or anything. It's, and so that's handy. It's a pretty, once you get your head around it, it's pretty light. For those people who are new to Twitter, I would say the one thing that saved me for Twitter in the last year is just culling the people I follow. I'm back down to about 270. I know Claire Amos doesn't like me, but it helps your brain, right? Like if you're following over 500 people or 1,000, 1,500, whatever it is, you're just constant because you feel you got to keep up with them all. Mm-hmm. Cut back. Hell, don't follow me. Stop following me. That'll be helpful.
I think there's something in there for me that a number of people have touched on here. This idea of can't be everything for everyone. And at the same time, because it is volunteer basis, nobody gets paid here. Everyone does it on top of their full-time jobs and sometimes study and sometimes other fellowships and all kinds of crazy other things that we fit this in alongside. So I guess part of what we also have to make sure is that what we commit to is the things that we're passionate about, the things that make you come alive and want to spend extra time on. So part of me also wonders about the passions that different people in our edchatNZ community might want to bring to this. I know for me, my leadership personally has grown so much over the years because of Twitter. My family didn't believe me at first, but they've learned now. So I do wonder about what our community might want to explore, what their passions are in education that they might want to bring to the table in this space where sometimes in schools there isn't the time or the place, or it's not the right moment, but that this community might offer something instead for those people.
There's still more questions than answers in general.
Here's some questions.
But there's one suggestion, one simple suggestion. Developing critical friends within a chat so that there's more devil's advocate to go around. Or devil's advocate, you're being challenged.
So I'm curious about, so what kind of questions are we seeing, Mel?
There are more conversations now that people just sort of questioning and challenging each other.
We've bored them. They've gone off to their own conversations.
Is the purpose of the chats to grow? No, so things like this, is the purpose of the chats to grow ourselves as a community of educators, be challenged to change? Is EdChat doing this? Is it the purpose to get growth? If so, in what numbers, alternative perspectives, other education stakeholders? Yeah, just pretty much repeating our questions. There's one comment from Pip who said that she loves some of her overseas ed chats way more, and I've asked her what they do that she loves about them, and I'm waiting for a response on that.
I think one of the things that's a challenge possibly is that by definition our hashtag is so general. Or this hashtag is so general. You have site chat which Rachel runs, and so specifically, you're gonna be a science person. You've got that. I know Leanne's in it. That mad one that happens at 5:30 New Zealand time in the morning. I don't know. Hashtag. Why are you up so early? I'm not quite sure what it is, but But I look at that. I'm not going anywhere near it. But there is a focus to those hashtags or those communities that possibly we don't have, and possibly that's a weakness in terms of the edchatNZ one. On the flip side of that, I think I'll often tag if I'm finding something interesting that's coming out of the States or global, I'll drop edchatNZ on it, not within a chat framework, but that I know that people following that are people in New Zealand sector, so I'm just kind of throwing it to them. A little bit like, this is the standard edchat one. For me, it's shorthand for sharing with this community of people, most of whom I haven't met. So there's a strength and a weakness to it, I think. And again, I suppose it's that, you can go back to question one, how niche do you be? Because you could have, hashtag NZ first year teachers. I don't know, you could really you could really focus it down. But then that becomes a slightly, more intense load in terms of managing which hashtag I need to follow.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And on the flip side, it's precisely because there's one broad general one that we've seen such cross-sector people come together as well. So you're always juggling things. Matt, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I mean, the things that Tim mentions exist, so we've got SciChatNZ hashtag, we've got a MathChatNZ hashtag, a BT for beginning teachers, an HPE one. They're out there so that those communities can focus on their specific needs, resources, questions, etc. So they exist. I think you're talking about BFC.
That's the one. That's the one.
There it is. Yeah.
I'm just tagging you in it now.
I like my one better.
yeah. Why are you up so early? Love it.
The hashtag jet lag or something. Anyway, yeah.
Just hearing the conversations going on there, I had a couple of thoughts there. The hashtag itself, I wonder, does it need any growth? It's there. It's doing a good job, isn't it? And if people on Twitter disagree with me, please say so. I'll only throw my toys for 2 minutes. So I don't see growth being needed in the hashtag. It's promoted through Facebook. It's promoted through Twitter itself. It's promoted simply by being used by us. The chats themselves, one of the things I've often wondered is, what's the follow-up to that chat? What's the next step? What's the next learning? What is the moderator or the team that have put it out there, what can they suggest to me as further readings or further resources or something like that I can take that further? You often see that a chat will go on for another hour that night, which is great, just with side conversations. Not so great to be going till 10:30, but sometimes even for 2 or 3 days, people will be sharing, talking, using the hashtag, and that's great. Does that suggest that we do need to grow it in a different direction for something to be available? I don't know what the platform is. I'm just musing, but do we need another platform for that follow-up post-chat? Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer there. It's only a question.
Right now, there's probably several providers of platforms lining up to email Danielle.
All right, news for them. I'm terrible at responding to emails.
Yeah, Tyra's just commented on the side chats as well and being provocative in those. And I think they, for me, were probably, as when I very first joined EdChat, they were the hardest to get my head around in terms of just trying to go through the very fast stream. But now they're my, they're my bread and butter, those side chats.
They are, yeah. One of the things that I've been wondering about, and I've just posted a tweet to a blog post, is this idea of knowledge building. I don't know if how familiar people are with this, but basically it boils down to idea improvement. So let's say we're talking about digital technologies, curriculum implementation, whatever we want, but that when we come together, it's not just about sharing our ideas, but it's about how do we actually improve this idea. And I've been wondering about that as a potential direction for some of us and some of the people out there who are looking for the next level of challenge. So I've put the link out in the Twitter feed, so it's far too juicy to skim over now. So might be something that people want to have a look at and get back to at some stage. But yeah. I do wonder if, because so many of us have talked about how this was our entry level, but since then, because I'm in 5 years of moderating chats, and some of us will, you kind of get a bit over it at times, if we're perfectly honest, as you would do after 5 years of every fortnight Twitter chats. So I do wonder what, in terms of sustainability, because I feel like there's a really nice bit of momentum here, that it would be a shame for that to just disappear off somewhere. And I know over the years, so obviously behind the scenes stuff that has happened, and as you hear the stories of things that have happened as a result of the connections that people have made on edchatNZ, and the amount of things that we've gotten to have a say in, the conversations that we've gotten to be part of as a result, at a national level, is massive. So I do wonder about sustainability on the one side, and then doing something that still meets all these needs of all these people. I don't know, getting sidetracked.
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm obviously failing a little bit my duty because I think we've dragged a little bit over time on this question too, but I think one of the things that is really important, Danielle, to recognize, and obviously you're a lot closer to it than probably even some of us four or other people on Twitter, is I think there's a real value in maintaining. We sometimes forget that. I think there's a fantastic site, there's a conference, I think it's just called the maintainers.org, but there's lots of stuff there about actually the value of maintaining and building, and just holding things. You think of all of the people in our organizations who we don't see because they work from 7 o'clock at night cleaning and tidying our schools. They're the ones who are keeping that place that we walk into every day ticking over the way it does. Talk about unsung heroes. And I think that element of maintaining a thing that allows it to continue to be a powerful thing is undervalued. And because we live in we've got a culture and a society that is bigger, better, faster, more. So that's just natural. But I think it's a nice point to move on to question 3. And hearing it in your voice as well, Danielle, is that the question of who should be responsible for edchatNZ. Because I think, as you said earlier, Danielle, all of us have many things going on. Children, our own work, our own careers, partners' careers, all that kind of stuff. And to allow it to be sustainable and to be maintained. What are your thoughts as a panel, and also obviously on Twitter, as to how should it be responsible? As Danielle said, it is all volunteers. And how are we able to, as a community, continue to maintain it? And who, I think, is an interesting question.
One of the things I've liked...
I go ahead, Matt.
Go for it, Danielle. No, I can wait.
I guess for me, I feel like I'm in a slightly different space, in the sense that a little part of me feels responsible for this. It is a community, and I always talk about, I feel like I'm just the glue. So I just stick a bit of glue on, and then I bring some people together, and then off they go, and they attach some more people. So I often feel like I'm doing a lot of gluing, and I feel responsible for the gluing. So I feel like my role here, and what I've done in the past and what I might do in the future, I do wonder how this could be less of me and more of everyone, because the more of us that are doing that kind of thing, the bigger this becomes, and the more powerful, and the more different people can benefit from it. So that's me. Matt, how about you?
I was sort of going to mention about how this year we've had quite a lot of different people moderating the chats. And I think that's been a really good progression, possibly not so much for Philippa, who's been involved in a lot of the coordinating of that, but for at least sharing some of that workload, making it so there's that collaboration in the questions and the topics, that sort of thing. So who's responsible for it? I think those that have a passion in seeing, in a chat topic or in a in a context are responsible. And I'd hope that people would put, if they're really keen to give it a go, would get in touch with one of us by Twitter, by email, whatever, to say, hey, look, I'd really love to have a go at it. We've got amazing people who contribute so often to the chats, and I'd love to see if they wanted to. I'd love to see them saying, yeah, I've got something I'd really love to lead a chat about. I've loved that this year, seeing such a variety of chat contexts, because they're being brought out of different communities, I suppose, of interest.
Yeah. For me, there's a question. Sorry.
So I was just going to point out our devil's advocate in the background saying, moderating edchatNZ can be exhausting, but being devil's advocate can apparently be done during a third glass of wine. So thank you, devil. Thank you indeed.
Yeah, it was, there's a couple of good tweets on here as well. One from Raywin saying sort of two clear problems emerging is how do you maintain the early adopters and their passion, and then cater for the newbies as well. And a few suggestions along the lines of, having an ongoing doc of suggested topics and people just stepping in to moderate the ones that they're interested in. And I think there's a lot of support for sharing the load and for people, I guess, helping out.
Yeah, because probably the thing I would like to throw in is that after a mere 6 months of coordinating edchatNZ, just from, prodding and putting the tweets out and doing the forms, I was ready to chuck the towel in. There's a difference here between feeling a sense of responsibility, and I'm just going to say it bluntly, having a sense of commitment to seeing something through. And because that's the other part of the glue that really does hold a community like this together. If we feel a sense of shared, if it is a community, then to me there is a sense of shared responsibility, but that needs to be supported, with commitment to it.
And I think I can really vouch for that from a number of people who, like Philippa and Nat and Mal here, who have been part of organising conferences and who have been picked up the game with moderating, and with Philippa, who's been stepping in the last 6 months while I've attempted to make progress on my thesis, that these people have committed, and as a result things have kept going, and the community has seen more diversity, which is great because it's the diversity that helps us do all this learning. So definitely responsibility. I think you've touched on something really important there. Responsibility is one thing, but I'm really interested in who are the other people who want to commit to, I guess, all the other things that needs to happen in order for this community to keep maintaining. Which, by the way, Tim, I've made a note about power of maintaining. It's going on my extreme post-it wall as a thing to think about. Thanks.
I've tweeted the website too.
Did you find? Yeah, sorry, I don't have Twitter open at the moment, but I think it's either the maintainers or maintainers.org. Just a couple of thoughts there. I think one question was: is there as opposed to Matt just saying, "Look, we hope you people would tweet us or email us," is there any sort of formal space where other than, and I know there's a doc that goes around, but is there? I'm just thinking for people who
disappeared.
Oh, am I?
So we did hassle Tim that at some stage that he's going to have to moderate by miming. So now's your chance, Tim.
I don't know what you're talking about. I can hear him.
I can hear Tim to sort out his mic.
No, Tim's coming through loud and clear.
It's you, Danielle. No, I'll just keep talking and I'll pretend that I'm miming for Danielle. One of my thoughts is there a formal space where this stuff is set up and that people can access and that people can contribute and log on? That might be something that people in Twitter who are thinking, well, if it's just all kind of vague, what are some simple structures that might help people take on some of that responsibility? And without just wanting to be a solutions guy, it could be interesting. And I'm thinking, because I've got my DP's hat on and we've been thinking about PTCs, I mean, if you had it set up where people committed to 3 months or 6 months to moderate essentially nationwide PL, professional development, that could sit probably quite well in some people's PTCs and some of the things they're recording. But I don't know, things like that might be handy, might be interesting for people to think about taking more active responsibility for that, to continue that if they feel that it's a useful thing.
Some of the other suggestions are slow chats as well, so they sort of then, once they get started, manage themselves to a degree.
And I think that we probably do have to own, for those of us who have sat behind the scenes a little bit, I do think we have to own that. Oh man, I started this sentence and I can't remember how I was going to finish it. Awkward pause. That we had a sense that we wanted to be able to offer some reasonably rigorous topics with some rigorous questioning. And so there has been some quality assurance that, that we've kind of had in the background. And so maybe when I sort of posed the question on Twitter earlier, that maybe we needed to first of all be more explicit and transparent about what actually happens, behind the tweet deck, so that people can actually see what that does actually look like, so that we can maybe help and scaffold and support people to be in this space a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think Philippa's just said in a very delicate and diplomatic way what I was feeling last term, having moderated a chat that I thought could have come out of 4.5 years ago, and I felt really deflated after a chat that I'd moderated, but none of us, I guess, until tonight in doing this have admitted that we wanted to let go of it necessarily as well. And so the responsibility of exactly what Danielle said, of the quality assurance, and that we need help because we can't do this like this anymore. But are we ready to accept help and let other people in?
I think there's also a step further, and deliberately putting on devil's advocate here, is at what point do we go, actually, we just let it go? That said, like, by no means do I want to let go, don't get me wrong here, but I think it's an important question worth asking, is at what point do we say, actually, we're done with Twitter now, well, we're done with Twitter chats now. If somebody else wants to step up, by all means, or show you the way. But is that a question that at some stage has to be asked?
Yep.
I think it's a fair question.
It is.
Yeah.
I know in edchatNZ, the group of us that are involved in that decided that doing edchatNZ chats every fortnight, and then we dropped it back to once a month. Even back to once a month, we were going, they're getting a bit samey. And so we were losing our passion for it, to do it that way. Whereas to do it, for us to think broader and go, okay, so the edchatNZ team to run a chat through edchatNZ, we're finding a lot more, well, personally, I'm finding it a lot more meaningful and more sustainable. But even then, the amount of effort and time put into one of those, is it time that the chats are addressed, whether they are of enough value to those who take part that they run, or do we just let it be a hashtag that is there to support a community, and maybe there's a chat that is a slow chat using that hashtag that runs for a week or a fortnight or something like that?
I think on the flip side of this also is that I've had a number of conversations where some people are pretty keen for another edchatNZ conference, though.
That's because of the morning tea. We're educators. It's always about the morning tea when you go to conference.
Always.
And the stellar company.
That's the one. Oh, that too, yeah. I think we might jump to, just because I'm keeping half an eye on the time, and we're left with about 10 minutes, I think, if my clock's right. Question 4, and question 4 was another very broad one. What will we commit to next, and for how long? And I think we've possibly started to dig at that a little bit. And as Mel said, some people want to step back, maybe considering needing to step back. you know, or as Maddie said, doesn't need to be reframed. And I think, as well as, you know, hearing from people and how, from on the Twitter side, how that might be or what might work for them, I guess also in terms of time, I just wanted to ask the 4 panelists to consider the slight tweak to that, which is, what for you could it be next? What would you commit to next, and for how long? Because each of you 4, arguably more than me, have been, you know, committed to this this endeavor and this community in far deeper and more detailed ways. And I think hearing from each of you as honestly and as plainly as you wish, as to, you know, as leaders in this community, what would you commit to next? And it could be in a different format. It could be in a, you know, Matt's already mentioned slow chats, or, you know, a conference or other things. But I guess I think it'd be quite powerful for the people on Twitter and in the community or watching later to know from you, you know, what is the capacity we've got, and that might help some of them either, you know, frame up some commitment themselves to step up more, or, you know, you might just get chocolates and roses in the post tomorrow. I don't know. But from each of you, just one thing. What would you commit to next, and for how long? Philippa.
Well, I would totally commit to receiving the chocolates and the roses. But I would really welcome the opportunity to, you know, mentor, coach people. If people were wanting, you know, if we kept with some chats, if people were wanting some mentoring and coaching around that, they would absolutely commit to supporting other people to come into that space. For me, in terms of committing my time and my energy, for me, that would lie with really rethinking, you know, a conference experience. So that's probably where I would rather kind of pivot and focus more on that.
Thank you. Matt?
For me, I mean, despite the things I've said, I still see a lot of value in the chats. I'm really keen to particularly facilitate getting the edchatNZ team involved in helping moderate a chat once a term, and saying it'll be there for that. I'm really interested in exploring how we could have a follow-up to the chats, you know, what follow-up, what support can be there afterwards. I know I'm very keen to see another edchatNZ conference and to be part of helping organise that after not being able to help last time. I like my cups of coffee and my good morning teas, so I'm with you, Tim. Yeah, and to be honest, for capacity, I think if I'm doing that, I'm going to struggle to fit much else more in. So that would be able to be looking at supporting chats going on, supporting the follow-up to the chats, and hopefully a conference.
Cool. Thank you, Matt. Mel?
Yep, sucker for punishment. I'm keen for another conference. I just love getting together with this group of people in person. I think we see each other so often online, but there's just something important. Philippa and I have a cry every time we leave each other when we've been in the same city, because it happens like once a year. And so, yeah, definitely that. One of the ideas that's just stuck out at me from the Twitter stream is somebody suggesting not necessarily a scheduled chat, but when something important pops up, and a responsive chat. And maybe it's once a term, maybe it's once a month, but if there's an idea out there that people feel need discussing, that someone organises a chat and it gets advertised, and that appeals to me because I am in my new role. Well, it's not that it doesn't feel that new anymore, but in the role I'm in at the moment, I am struggling to get to the fortnightly chats and to commit to the fortnightly chats in my workload, and particularly because I don't think they're meeting, in a selfish way, I don't think they're meeting my needs anymore in terms of being a chat participant. And so, but the idea of there being something really topical and really meaty, if I saw that come up in my stream, I think I'd put aside the time to actually join in and support that. So I think jumping into the slow chats or jumping into the occasional really meaty topical chat in the conferences where I'd be sitting.
Cool. And Danielle, last one.
As you asked that question and twisted it to what do we commit to, I thought, yep, that's why we asked him to do this. Yep. I think there's a number of things for me here. I feel like I've already committed myself to another conference because I may have already invited a keynote speaker just the day before yesterday. So, yep, sorry about that, guys. So definitely another conference next year, and hopefully we'll probably still have to talk to Matt and Karen Gray and all the Christchurch peeps, but I feel like Christchurch is on the cards there.
This is the narrator cutting in. If you're watching on Twitter or on the live stream, this is Philippa's behind the scenes right now. Go, Daniel.
So that's part of it, is that definitely another conference I think is on the cards. I really enjoy the last one in particular. I really enjoyed that because we don't have all kinds of bureaucracy and things that we're accountable to. We can really push some boundaries and try some crazy different things, and that I think is the thing that's really still driving me in this space. I do like the occasional Twitter chat. I really do enjoy them still from time to time, but I do wonder if there's something about having them. I think there's something about the slow chat thing that I really like the sound of, and that I feel like it's worth committing to. And I also think this current events, things happening thing, I think there's something worth investigating there. So I feel like I can commit to some topical things as they come up, definitely.
Thank you. And I'll flip it back on myself. And one of the things that I've been committing to, and it's popped up in a couple of those, is actually trying to commit to more face-to-face with that thing that we've said all the way through, which is that this edchatNZ thing is just about a community. It happens to be with a tool called Twitter, and there are conferences and events. But I think one of the really powerful things is actually meeting up with a core of people who you know, sorry, excuse the pun, with a group of people who you know in your local space, and meeting up with them regularly, I think, is really important. I was catching up with Paula today, Philippa, and I said that same thing, that sometimes you know, because we don't have a culture where, you know, of gathering, we don't have those, you know, church, we don't even go to sport anymore because it's too expensive when we watch it on TV. But that way in which we actually gather for a catch up and to chat regularly is really, really important. And I think that's good for well-being. I think that's good for, you know, just being human. And so that's what I'm trying to commit to this year.
Tim, you'll be interested in a tweet that Sol has just put up, #PubPD. What better way to have educated professional development than in a pub? So let's commit to maybe some ed chats in our local pub.
Yep.
Now that is something I can get behind.
Well, I think it falls to me because I think we've gone past our 9:30 slot. Just to do kind of a wrap up, and I've got a couple of post-its. I may not capture everything, but that's what a recording is for. You can go back and watch it yourself. I think we started off with saying that this edchatNZ thing is actually a really powerful personal process. It's incredibly cross-sector, very non-judgmental, and has been quite useful in terms of pushing back at the echo chamber which often exists in digital online spaces. We then did a bit of a chat around how do we grow this? Do we grow it? Is it worth growing? How do you grow it? And what's sustainable? And I think that that balance, how do you find a balance between being niche for certain groups and then still being general enough to reach out to as much as possible? Do we, as Matt said in his final wrap up there, how do we frame follow-up spaces for something that happens in such a general way? And I guess that really challenging bit is growth for growth's sake really, is that important. We then switched to looking at a question of who takes responsibility for something that's volunteer driven. To last for 5 years is very impressive. It doesn't, people are giving up a lot of time, and each of the 4 people on this panel have their full-time jobs, as well as partners and other things going on. Matt, for example, has to look after his fish. But there are lots of things going on in our lives, and how do we take responsibility? How do we, maybe, as Philippa said, provide more transparency and more openness, more formality around allowing other people to take responsibilities, to share and build it, and as Danielle said, to continue to bring diversity and growth to this community. And that's not without its challenges. You have people who have cared a lot and helped grow something. To give that away is a very big thing, and to pass it on to good hands is it can be a tough thing. And we finished there just with 4 posits around what are the things that we would commit to as individuals. And I think, from conferences to framing chats and slow chats, to pub PD and the importance of that face-to-face thing, I think it's all about what you can commit to and what you can balance your life with, and so that all parts of your life are being as useful and beneficial as possible. And I've not followed any of the Twitter chat, but I'm sure the Devil's Advocate has stirred up a few things, and I might have to jump back and have a look. I might leave. Are there any gems in there, Mel, that you can throw into this final summary?
Other than appreciation of your sexy voice. Can blame
Damn, is that going to get its own hashtag? Tell me
that. Pretty much exactly what you just finished up saying, that people going back and reading the chats afterwards, the conference still being spoken about this week at work, being careful that we don't space them out so much that if you miss one night, it's going to be a couple of months before you get another one. Yeah, lots of diverse views, and that's the whole point of the group, isn't it?
So. Yep. So I think I will wrap up there. Just want to say thank you to Danielle for asking me along to do the job, the moderation role. I hope I filled enough. Thank you to Matt. Thank you to Mel. Thank you to Philippa. And I will hand off to Danielle to do the wrap up and finish. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. For me, it's just a really big thank you to everyone, not just those people on the panel, but all those people who sign on a Thursday night, who come to conferences, and who just care enough to even make this a thing, that a conversation like this is necessary. I think there's something pretty special. And just a really big thank you to everyone who got involved tonight. And we look forward to hearing from you as well. You should know that Philippa likes wine a lot, so if you're going to send stuff, wine works for her. But definitely, just a big thank you to everyone who's gotten involved over the years. And yeah, I think we'll leave it at that. So thank you very much, everyone, and go have some rest and work-life balance, eh?
Thanks, Liz.
Good night, everyone.